So today I'm going to be painting this in the video, and by the title you already know this was done with cheap watercolours. So my question is, if you didn't already know that, and just by looking, could you tell it was done with cheap watercolours? I would love to know your opinion, so please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section and I'll have a read. Hello everyone, so today's video is longer than I normally do. It wasn't intentional. It just sort of happened and I was happy with that. So as I'm doing this recording for this intro now, I've already done the video, I've already done the painting, so I already know in advance how the paints worked, how I felt about them, all that kind of stuff. So today I'm going to be painting with cheap watercolours, and obviously I'm not the first person to do this concept for a video, and I won't be the last. I don't know, I was just inspired to do it because I'd been seeing a lot of them pop up for me to watch recently, so I thought I'd try. So I went around to numerous shops trying to find cheap watercolours, and I found loads of different watercolours. Some didn't have a brand, some of them did, and I didn't buy them because I was actually on the hunt to find the cheapest, at least the cheapest I could find, to really add to the interest of the challenge for me, I guess, to see what I could paint with cheap watercolours. So these are 99p, so they're not even a actual pound, and they're the cheapest that I could find. So this was kind of a roller coaster of a painting, because there were times where the watercolours surprised me, and then there was a time where that surprise turned into disappointment. So when I did the swatching, the red was absolutely really pretty. It was a beautiful colour. I think the orange one was quite nice as well. The yellow was really pretty. The pinks and the purples were kind of muted. They were dull with their pigment. And I will also say that I won't be using the brush that they provide with it. The brush is obviously notoriously hated. It's plastic wire. So I don't hate myself enough to go ahead and try using that paintbrush as well. So I just use my own paintbrush. So like I said, I was happy with the swatches, and then I started putting them in the mixing dish to see how they reacted and to mix my first colour. And as you can see, they separated, which I kind of expected. You know, they're cheap watercolours, but at that point, that was the point where it went from happy with the swatches to when I realised, oh yeah, here's where the challenge starts. So before I actually went on to my main painting itself, I did a little border on the other page of the sketchbook under my swatches to just have a practice with them to see how they felt. And it's hard to describe how they felt because they felt grainy, because they were grainy, but they didn't really work like watercolours. So normally when I use a watercolour, obviously they blend together, they mix well together. These did not. The colours mixed with water on their own. So if I just used green and added water, it did go into the wet and wet technique like watercolours. But if you added two colours together, they wouldn't. They would just sort of sit on top of each other, and the colour would pull together and gloop, and they wouldn't mix. And that was really difficult to work with, because I like to use wet and wet technique. I like to pop two colours together and have them mix and kind of do their own thing. So I had to change how I painted, because these would not do that technique for me. So on this little landscape here, when I was trying to mix the colours for the trees, I started to notice this, and this is the part when I started to really, I almost said to myself, you know what, I'm not going to do this video, it's not worth it, we'll just scrap it and pretend I didn't consider this. But I'd already gone around and bought them all, and I thought, no, we'll stick to it, we'll see how this goes. And then here I show you what the painting looks like when it's wet, and then what it looks like when it's dry. And then I go on to actually painting the main video itself, which is done in real time, not voiced over. Oh, here we go again. Okay. Nope. Move this backwards. This. Oh, that's going to annoy me. I better be careful not to hit the mixing tray, otherwise that's going to make an awful noise. Because of these bits, they scrape. If I put this, yeah, okay, if I put that there, These look already look dirty. I don't know how else to put them. Yeah, they can sit there. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, I'm just adjusting my chair. Oh, and knocking my table. I've got to be careful of that because of the sound it makes. Okay, so I'm going ahead, and to start off with, I'm going to use this horrible kneaded eraser. Well, this one isn't horrible in particular, I just don't really like kneaded erasers. I hate how they feel. And I once had a kneaded eraser that made my hands itch, so I kind of stay away from them. But because this is cheap watercolour, I thought it would be fairer to lighten up the sketch, because this pencil, I talked about it in another video how much I love this pencil, and I'll be rebuying it because I like the control, how it feels. I think it gives me better control when I use it. This pencil is easier to press down on, and because it's cheap watercolour, like I said, I thought it'd be a fairer test to give it less pencil to cover over the top of. I hope I'm using this right. I know you sort of, can you do it like this? Or maybe. Oh, okay, that works a bit better. So I really like this sketch. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but I'm really proud how it turns out. And I think halfway through, when I was doing the sketch, I think I forgot what the challenge was that I was challenging myself to do. So obviously I'm not the first person to do this challenge, I won't be the last to do cheap art supplies. So these watercolours were 99p, so they were 1 penny away from being £1. And I think I researched online for dollars, that's $1, $23. If I'm wrong, correct me. I don't use dollars, so I don't know the how to calculate it in dollars. But for 99p, just a penny short of £1. So I'm just going to spray these. So as you can see, I did practice, which I did record, so you've probably already seen it, but okay. Oh, okay. I'm already regretting my decision in doing this. This whole process of sketching it has been quite a roller coaster, because at first they did the swatches, looked quite good and they did quite well, and then obviously when I realised that they don't really blend, they sort of just melt into each other but don't blend. But at the same time, this was the point of the challenge. I mean, I paid, like I said, 99p. I expected them to be cheap. I expected them to be. That's the whole point. But I think maybe I kind of regretted deciding to do this. But I went round all these different shops. Might use a bigger paintbrush. I went through all these different shops trying to find cheap watercolours for this challenge. There were ones that weren't really cheap enough, is the best way to describe them. So there was some of them were like £8, and I think the cheapest ones that I did find was it was £3, and I was quite tempted actually to try them, but they were watercolour in tubes and they were on clearance, and I don't use watercolour tubes anyway, so I didn't think it would be a fair experiment. I don't really know. So one thing I did find that once they dry, you can add, like, layer them on top. Add a bit of this brown and then a bit more of the orange to see. And the other reason I didn't want to go for the tubes and buy the more expensive, well, I say expensive, I'm doing quotation marks, I say expensive, is because I didn't know what I was going to do with the watercolours afterwards. Like, if if it's cheap watercolours and you're not going to use them, what would I do with them afterwards? That sort of did stick in my mind when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I might let that dry because, like I said, it doesn't really blend. So when I did the brown, it doesn't really blend. I'm just going to. Okay. They're difficult because how can I describe them? They actually feel grainy. Actually, they feel grainy. Right, so I'm going to. So I'm trying to make a coppery colour. If I add a bit of red, maybe. Obviously, there's these don't have colour names. I'm just saying what they are: red, pink, blue, white. I see that's too pink now. Oops. Okay, more brown. Okay, that's a bit more coppery. Now if I do this to make a lighter one. I'll use that. My next door neighbour is playing music and I hope you can't hear it. I can hear it, but I'm hoping that you can't. Because if you can, I'll have to do a voiceover for this, and I was really hoping to not have to do a voiceover. How am I going to do this? So normally with my watercolours, I'd use indigo to make something darker. So this is blue. Will this work? Well, that kind of worked, but not where I wanted it to. Oh, look at that. Oh, that poor orange. Oh, that's darker. Yeah, they don't actually. It's so annoying. They don't mix or anything. They literally just sort of sit on top of each other and pull. Okay, so like I said though, if I wait for them to dry, they do a bit better. Just can't decide whether I want to do the dark areas first or the lighter areas. Because of how they work, I've kind of had to change how I would normally paint. Let's try it. Will this work? Ooh. Okay. That works a little bit better. Kind of. Okay. careful with this, please don't squeak, it's the most horrific sound. Oops. And one thing I want to say, I was quite surprised at, is that these don't rub off as much as I thought they would. Like if you really, oh sorry, I shouldn't do that. Like if you really rub them off, they do. But I have some premium watercolours, premium watercolours from a watercolour kit that I've only used once that I thought would also be an interesting video to do. Similar to this, to see, so I can go back and see if they're as bad as I remember, that really rubbed off. They hardly stuck to the paper. But like I said, I thought it'd be an interesting video to go back and explore, because I only used them once, and it's like, you know, did I give them enough chance? Oh, I hate this so much. Oh, I hate this. I mean, I'd kind of use water to kind of, oh, I use this, I'm just using tissue to dab it off. Maybe, can I still pull it off like I can with watercolour? Okay, that's a bit better. That's a bit more of a saving grace. Okay, I'm just lighten this up. Just to do this bit carefully. Okay, well, I think I'm getting somewhere. It's not great, but it's, yeah, okay, I don't mind that. I think that's probably about as good as I'm going to get it for now, until it dries and I can add stuff on top. So what bit should I work on next? Although, actually no, I know what I'll do first. I'll do these bits first because I will forget to do them. And then I'll do a background colour and it'll be very difficult to do them afterwards. Go ahead and try and make a, oh, now the yellow is now all dirty. Great. I'm going to try and make a golden colour for this bit here and these bits. Yeah, okay. Can you tell I'm not that impressed? Oh, why did I do this? Let's try and, oh, I hope, I know I'm not saying a lot, I hope this is somewhat a little bit entertaining, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling a lot here. Part of me hopes it's not recording so I can just call this a day and pretend it never happened, but at the same time I went to so many shops to try and find a watercolour that I thought would be best to try, a cheap watercolour, and it's like I don't want to waste my journey, or that I went out looking, but oh. Yeah, so I kind of find out that they sorry, I don't know what my voice did there. See, like there, they do better. They don't really do what watercolour does, which is obviously, you know, blend, but they do okay with layering on top. Yeah, that's strange to me, but I'll take it. Sorry, I'll take I'll take what I can get. If I figure out how they work, I can at least try and make them work for me, if that makes sense. Okay. So I want it to be brighter. So obviously if I'm doing it so it's in layers, I'll do the darker shading bit once this layer is dried, and then the same with the copper kettle. Although I'm afraid to touch the copper kettle because I don't mind how it looks at the moment and I'll be afraid to ruin it. So that's the pumpkin. So normally what I'll do for the flowers is there is a bit of a sketch of the flowers. I don't know whether it's a bit of a cop out to kind of maybe go ahead and do loose interpretive flowers rather than the flowers that I've done here. I don't know. Too late now, I've already started rubbing them out. So. This could be a disaster, but okay, right, so right, first I need to make a green that I like because I wanted the actual vase itself to be green, because I was trying to decide when I was planning colours in my head whether I wanted the pumpkin to be green, that obviously to be copper, and that to be orange. But I should have done some thumbnailing sketches, but I didn't. Well, that's a nice green. I don't know if you can see it. That's a nice green for the actual leaves, but I don't like that green for the vase. Oh. Nope. I can't make it copper as well. That's gross. That's a gross green. Oh, okay. Oh. I've just realised I'm not sure the bit that I'm doing this in is actually visible to the camera, so I'm just talking about colours that you can't see. Alright, let's try this. Oh. Oh, I hate that. Oh, I hate how this works. And don't get wrong, I know that's the point. I'm not you know, being like, oh my goodness, how come these really cheap watercolours aren't doing fantastic? I mean, that's the point of the challenge. You kind of know that they're going to be difficult to work with. And it's funny because once upon a time, I didn't use these ones, but I used to use ones that worked similar. And it's hard to believe that those sort of watercolours back then would be like the things that started making me decide, oh hey, watercolour is my favourite medium. You know. Okay. So yeah, so one thing that obviously they do is that you get globs of these bits of colour, and the rest, I don't know if you can see them. So like here, there's a blob of colour. There's a blob of colour here, blob of colour here. You can't really get a smooth, flat wash. I'm going to try and see if I can. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll leave that. I won't touch that because if I touch that again, it could ruin what I've managed to get it to do. So I'll leave that there. We'll try the oranges. The oranges I think are simple. A bit of yellow, a bit of orange. I should be okay. Which I've just realised I've actually forgotten to do the bottom of the actual copper kettle. Okay, let's try the flowers. Oh dear. Okay, so Ooh, I'm not sure I like that. I don't think the yellow really goes with that green. Okay. Maybe I should have stuck to this sketch initially. Well, then maybe not, because I might be able to use a green to draw stems, so it makes more sense. And I haven't actually added the leaves yet, so let's do that now. A green and a yellow. Oops. Oh. Okay. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's some noise outside. Somebody's doing some DIY work. And right now I wish I was doing DIY work instead of this. No, I mean a bit dramatic. It's turning out better than I thought. When I did the landscape over here, that was my lowest point of where I thought, oh, I've bitten off more than I can chew. And this isn't fabulous, but you know, I hate that. Maybe I should have stuck to the sketch that I had done. So we can get a darker green. No, that doesn't help. Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Is there any way I can... Oh, this might be dangerous, but we'll see. Can I... Please blend out a little bit so I can make it a bit more... Ooh. Where did that... There was a hair on this. Unless it was a bristle. Ooh. Anyway, so please blend out a little bit. Please. I'm just pleading with my watercolours. Please do something. I don't know if that's better or worse. I was just kind of hoping if I can get it to be a bit more loose. So I know I wanted I was trying to figure out what background colour that I wanted. Okay, well, if I can just about get this to... There we go. Right now it looks horrendous, I know, but I want to see if I can maybe change how I want to do the flowers. I mean, it couldn't get any worse, could it? Well, actually, don't say that, it could. Okay, we'll leave that to dry and then I'll figure out how I'm going to redo the flowers again. Okay, so now I need a bit of a grey. Is that from the watercolours? It's like, it's not hair, but there's a... Is it? Was it a bristle? I'm so confused. I keep seeing like this thing up here that kind of... No, maybe I'm imagining it. It's sort of grey. Oh, I'm sorry, that noise was awful. Shadow, please. Okay, so what I normally, I'll mix these two actually. Okay, now I'm going to go back and try to deepen up some of the colour on the copper kettle, which it's starting to feel a little bit like, I don't know, cheap gouache, I would say. The way it kind of sits on top of. And I'm not a gouache expert. I've only done a couple of paintings with my gouache, so I can't really. And the ones that I own aren't really expensive either, so I can't comment about super expensive gouache. But then again, I can't really say my watercolours that I normally use are the Winsor Newton, but they're the pans, not the tubes. And from my understanding, the ones in the pans, the ones in the tubes are more expensive, or at least they are when I go to the shop. Like the pans are like £2 something for a pan, like a replacement, and then like the watercolour tubes from Winsor Newton, like for one tube, like, I mean, they're quite big, about that for watercolour, about £6. So I'm just going to assume that they're slightly higher grade. I might just add a bit more orange to this before I start, because I'm going to do the shading for the pumpkin, but I still need a lot more orange than brown. I'll try that. Oh, maybe a bit more. Okay. Because if you listen to the awful noise this is actually causing, making, sorry, you can actually hear it sounds grainy. I quite like that. I have just realised one thing that I've forgotten to do. I have forgotten to do this bit on the pumpkin. It's like that. Sorry, I went really quiet there. I couldn't think of anything to say. I was so focused on trying to make that jar not look horrendous. I think, you know, when you see those, you sometimes watch these kind of videos where it's like cheap watercolour supplies, and sometimes you'll see it and you'll be like, oh, I can't believe that's made with cheap watercolour supplies. They've used it really well. This is not one of them. You cannot look at this and be like, oh, actually, they've done pretty good. No, no, they haven't. Oh. Okay, so I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with this disaster now. So I'm going to start doing some leaves. Okay. Although, in all honesty, without being on the dramatic side, these actually, they've done better than I expected them to do, I'd say. I think you can manoeuvre them to do something that's, I don't know how to describe it. It's still, that I still enjoy, I guess, because like despite these watercolors, I still hate that the second version's not any better, but I'm not touching it anymore. I can't be bothered. But despite the fact that they are still good to work with, I actually like how the copper kettle has come out. It's not perfect, but I still enjoy how it looks, if that makes sense. There's still bits and pieces of this that I enjoy despite the pain. Okay. I mean, obviously, are there better options out there? Yes. And I still think you can still get some ones that work slightly better than this that are still quite cheap. But the problem is, it depends what you sorry, I lost train of thought. It depends what you're using them for. If you're looking to experiment, I mean, for a start, I mean, obviously these are aimed at kids anyway, so. Oh, that doesn't matter. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all I can do. Now I might wait for it to dry and add a white gel pen. I don't know if that classes as cheating, but it's not really. It is a challenge, but it's not a ruled challenge. I'm so tempted to put some sparkly watercolours on this. Anyway, okay, so I'll be back when it dries. Hopefully I'll feel a little bit less dramatic, and I haven't been very articulate in talking through this video. I know I was too busy focusing and I said a lot of rubbish that didn't actually make sense. So after this is dried and I've added the pen, I might be able to give my thoughts better to a point where they make sense. Okay, I am back, and now I have got, sorry, I went and had lunch. I have come back and this bit's still a bit wet, but that's okay. By the time I've used this Sharpie creative marker on the other bit, so that should be dry enough as well. So I think I mentioned before I went while this was drying that, oh, sorry, must not move my table too much, otherwise it shakes like this. I think I mentioned before I went to go and have lunch and let this dry that while I was painting I was having a very difficult time getting words out. I was so focused on working with the paint itself that I don't think I actually made a lot of sense. Although half the time when I do these videos and I listen to my voiceover, I don't think I make a lot of sense anyway. But so basically what I was going to say is these watercolours are obviously 99p. They're cheap. They're supposed to be. That was the point of the challenge. I wanted, well, I say challenge, I just wanted to get a cheap watercolour set that cheapest that I could find and see what I could do with it. Obviously they're not good watercolours. They're not meant to be for that price, but I still think I managed to surprise myself with what I've made with them. Now yes, they were extremely difficult to work with, and obviously if it came down to the choice, I would obviously keep using the watercolours that's my favourite, that I always use. And obviously there's always a debate when beginners ask someone and they're like, oh, as a beginner, am I better off buying the expensive watercolour supplies or whatever supplies you're using, or cheap stuff because I want to get cheaper ones to start off? And obviously there's always that argument where people say no, because if you're a beginner and you buy cheap art supplies, you don't know what you're doing with the medium, and you have a medium that's difficult to work with because it's cheap. And then that being said, when I first started doing watercolour, I used the cheap set. I had a bigger version of this. I had like the £8 version that had a lot more colours, and yes, they were a bit like using these. They might have actually been a bit better actually than these ones, but I used them for a good year or so, I believe, before I started buying the kits that you could get in art shops. So I think it was the Cotman ones that I used, and then Winsor and Newton. I don't think I've really branched out a lot in watercolours, to be honest. I think I got one that I like, that I stick to, because I'm a little bit boring. So I can't really comment on that, because that does make sense that, you know, buying cheap art supplies as a beginner is very difficult because you don't know if it's a new medium, you don't know what you're doing. But at the same time, I think there's a middle ground. I think student grade, you can get a nice set from loads of different places, online, from shops, that will give you a nice middle ground. They're not absolutely expensively brilliant watercolours, but they also do pretty good performance to know if you like them. But that's just my, I don't know, that's probably not really that helpful, but at the same time I wasn't looking to do a big advice on what you should buy. This was literally just me figuring out what I could do with cheap watercolours, and I still can't decide whether I'm proud of, oh, I didn't like that. Oh dear. Yeah. I can't decide whether I'm proud of this. I don't know. I think I'm half proud of it actually. I think it turned out better than I thought it would. But it was still very painful, which I knew it would be. That was meant to be the entertaining part. And I don't know, I so want to use a colouring pencil to add some more colour and detail, but I think that would defeat the object. I think the idea in my head was a full painting with just cheap watercolours, because I would love to add some sparkle to it as well. So let me my pencil case, let me get my other white gel pen, see if I can do some thinner lines. Sorry. No, I don't think that really showed up. So the other thing I was going to say that really confused me, I think I also mentioned while I was actually doing it, watercolours work in layers anyway. You can do a wash and then put a colour on top and undertones and stuff like that. But these, not only did they feel very grainy, and when you painted with them you could actually hear the sound of the like grit or the grain in them, they kind of work like strangely like gouache more than watercolours, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm not a big, I think I also mentioned when I was painting it, I'm not the hugest gouache painter. I have dabbled in gouache and I do enjoy it. I struggle with it. But it's kind of in a weird way they felt like that, because when you put two colours together, when I was doing this, when you put two watercolours together from this palette, they didn't mix together. They did in the pan to make a new colour, but actually on paper they didn't mix together. They kind of just glooped together, like kind of like this bit here, glooped together and didn't do anything. I had to wait to do this green, and then this darker green here wasn't mixed in together like watercolours, it was just on top, more like gouache. That bit was confusing. So I had to kind of adapt how I would normally paint to use these, because normally I would do a lighter colour, put a darker colour, and then have them do a loose effect and mix together, you know, wet on wet. But this, I couldn't really do wet and wet with these. It was wet, let it dry, add a layer on top. So that I had to change how I paint to try and get something I enjoyed. Anyway, so I think, I don't know how long we've been pushing. Last time I checked it was like 30 minutes. We could be at 40. That's a long video for me, and a long video of me talking. So this is what they ended up looking after the battle. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them afterwards. It might be more fun now that I know how to use them to do another painting like this. Even if I don't do it as a video, it might be fun to do another one now that I know a bit more about them, so I can get the use out of them. They may have been only 99p, but I still bought them, so I want to figure out a way to use them. I don't want to just throw them away or anything like that. Right, so let's take the tape off. Ooh. Oh, another note, this sketchbook, when I do a sketchbook tour, which will be pretty soon, I'm almost, oh dear. It wasn't my favourite painting. Anyway, so this sketchbook is 160 GSM, and there's a whole story, probably boring, a whole story behind that when I do a sketchbook tour. I'm almost there. But this is actually 160 GSM, which it does very well for just 160, which is why I've just talked that about the sketchbook tour. Anyway, so there we go. That's my cheap watercolour attempt. Let me know what you think. I don't know. Do I like it? Do I not like it? What do I think about it? I'm not too sure. I'm half and half. Could have been better if I used different watercolours. Yes, but that wasn't the point. Do I quite like it? Compare, you know, do I what? Do I like it for the watercolours I use? There you go. There we go. Oh, I think I better turn off the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Oh dear. Hopefully this was entertaining. I entertained myself. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Bye bye.